The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. The radical. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, September 15th. I hope everybody is having a good start of the week. No, I'm not home yet. I've still got another week in Florence, and then take me a few days to get, we'll be in Madrid for 3-4 days, and then be home a week from Friday. A week from Friday, we will be home. So, no, I'm not homeless. I'm just evading my home. I'm just having a good time and being a working tourist in Florence, Italy. There are very few places in the world that it's more fun to be a tourist in than Florence. All right. All right. Let me know if video is off. I don't know if there was a freeze there or what. But yeah, let's jump in. Oh, we do have a hard stop today at 5:30 Eastern time. So today's show will be an hour and a half. So take that into account. If I get questions and I cannot answer them, I will answer them tomorrow. So all questions will be answered. But yeah, feel free to jump in with questions. We have our usual 2-hour goal going, and yeah, let's start with Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk last week. And of course, we now have the murderer in custody, or at least the presumed murderer in custody. As of the weekend, at least the indications were that that he was not being cooperative. That is, he was not talking. He was not being forthcoming in terms of why he did it, what his motivations were, and all of that, and whether there were other people involved. And so we still don't know firsthand, we still don't know from him at least, what exactly was going on. And we certainly don't know, again, if others at least knew of what he was planning to do, whether he shared the information and that, again, we'll find out more, I'm sure, as the feds look through his social media stuff and try to put it all together. In the meantime, there are many theories out there about what his motive was. And of course, we'll get to the most obvious motive, that Occam's razor suggests the one that's most obvious is the one that's real. But there are you'll see a number, particularly on Twitter, a number of people coming out there and explaining how all the symbols that he wrote down, all the stuff are all memes from games. And these are all, so one of the big explanations is that he is really a groyper, a black-pilled groyper. I didn't know such a thing. A black-pilled groyper is somebody who believes that there is no future. His life is doomed. The world is doomed. Let's get over with. Indeed, let's accelerate. Let's accelerate the end. Let's accelerate the doom. Let's accelerate the decline. So these are people who are nihilists, acknowledge nihilists. They don't believe there's anything positive in the world, nothing positive in their lives. And they want to build, and they want explicitly to bring death and destruction to the world. These are not your typical far-right kind of Christian nationalists who have a vision of the future, want to bring about a particular kind of future. These are, call them, in this case, probably right-wing, I think is the right terminology, nihilists who just want to burn everything down. Explicitly so. There's no other motivation. It's driven by hate of this world, and frustration and depression over the fact that they cannot find their place in this world, and they're convinced that the world is doomed, and they want to help make it doomed. Anyway, that is one of the interpretation out there, and he belongs to one of these. This is all linked to Nick Fuentes, although I don't know if Nick Fuentes is a black-pilled groyper or just a groyper. But there's a whole mass of literature out there about what they are and what they stand for, and but they're racist. They tend to be white supremacists and nationalists, and generally, generally bad people, and who have given up on life. I think, though, that the more reasonable explanation is the more obvious explanation, and that is that he was motivated by the idea that speech is violence, and by the idea that Charlie Kirk's speech, Charlie Kirk's statements, Charlie Kirk's arguments were offensive, and as a consequence constituted violence, and he was doing the just, honorable thing by, killing Charlie Kirk. I think that there are rumors out there that his roommate and potential sexual partner is a man transitioning into a woman, so is trans. This person, the roommate, is supposedly cooperating with the police and in police custody and cooperating with them. One of the things they want to know is, what did he know, when did he know it, and stuff like that. But he's also providing information about what might have motivated Tyler Robinson. So it's likely that he was radicalized by the left, radicalized into kind of crazy nihilistic leftist ideology, which again sees the world as pretty doomed, and insists on that the only positive outcome is complete equality, is egalitarianism. It's a nihilistic, destructive ideology. He was probably influenced there by this, lover, roommate who was trans. And if he felt like his lover was being dissed and put down by Charlie Kirk, if he felt like Charlie Kirk was kind of leading the anti-trans movement out there, and if, like a lot of leftists, he has bought into the idea, and like what's being taught at our universities, this is not just some crazy, out there, out of context, left-wing, leftist position. This is a position of many people at our universities who are teaching. If he came to believe that speech is violence, then violence against violence is legit. It's self-defense. So, if you think about Charlie Kirk being portrayed online as vehemently anti-trans, the fact that he got shot just as he was answering questions about trans issues, you've got a 22-year-old who wants to be the hero for the person he loves, supposedly, and who wants to be a hero to a whole community of nihilist leftists who want to see people like Charlie Kirk destroyed, and who are fighting the establishment. And you can see why he did it. You can see that he becomes an instant hero to a variety of forums, communities, subreddits, Discord channels that are far-left radicals who believe that anybody who does not agree with their agenda vis-a-vis trans people, for example, is therefore committing violence against them, and it needs to be taken out. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually comes out, but that seems to be the most likely explanation based on the data we have right now. People will try to spin in all kinds of directions. It is interesting because I'm learning a bunch of stuff in the online world that I didn't know. The far dark corners of the online far left, far right are very, very, very ugly places. And the internet allows the people who dabble in this stuff, right, who used to be maybe isolated. There was no way for them to communicate, probably no way for them really to get organized, and no way for them to really feed off of each other. They probably just, I don't know, became more conventional haters. Now there is this amazing mechanism online to be able to communicate, get inspired by, gain energy from all these other people who have joined your crazy little movement of, nihilistic, again, left or right, it doesn't really matter, of nihilists. Mostly, I think this is something that teenagers or early 20s in the basements of, playing video games are engaged in. Most of them grow out of it, but not all of them. Not all of them. Some of them obviously commit really horrific acts of violence on the way, maybe before they have an opportunity to grow out of it. So, and I think that's the case we have here. So, really horrible. We will learn, I think, more from Tyler Robinson as the investigation continues. In the meantime, as I told you last week, there are many people online who are celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, which is just horrific. But again, not surprising. Not surprising at all if you believe that speech is violence. I mean, this is as I said last week, this is the issue. The issue is the issue of free speech. The issue is what is speech, the nature of speech, and the fact that violence should not be allowed to be used against a speaker. And that we need to teach people that some speech is horrible. Some speech is disgusting. Some speech is immoral. Some speech is despicable. And the correct response to that is to walk away. Some speech is not even worth debating. Just turn your back. And for a legit organization, don't give them a stage. But if they have a stage, somebody else gave them a stage. And even if you think that what they're saying is horrific, disgusting, awful, you have no right to use force against them. You have no right to use force against them. And that is the fundamental here. That is the key issue. That's the lesson learned. That's what we should be fighting for. We should be fighting for the idea that speech never should lead to a violent response. Again, unless it's incitement or direct threat, right? But that's not clear that that's speech. That speech is countered with speech or countered with silence. Somebody wrote, I asked someone who is fine with Charlie Kirk's assassination how they would feel if I was murdered for my beliefs. And they said, well, that would be different. You don't talk about them. So it's the speaking that makes it okay to kill you. It's the speaking, not the holding the ideas, the speaking the ideas that turns those ideas into violence and turns into the ideas that, according to these people, warrant going after them. So this is the far left. This is the Free Palestine movement. This is the merger of the Islamists with the far leftists. This is the real horror today of a far left that dominates, or doesn't dominate in terms of numbers, but dominate in terms of noise, our universities, it certainly is true that there is a significant number of professors who are part of this, who teach it, who encourage it, who participate in it. Whether their justification at this point is Free Palestine or what they call trans rights, or whatever the issue happens to be, systemic racism, at the time, it's not limited to just fighting for what they think are injustices. It includes this idea of speech as violence. And therefore, these are bad ideas that need to be rooted out from our culture, from our universities, from everywhere. I found this. There was a post I found of this young guy sitting in the forest, and he's saying, "Look, this is horrible. What's happened? But you have to understand, there's a plan here. There are forces in the world that are, moving to. This, by the way, had 1.5 million views. Forces in the world moving us to make this cultural war a civil war. They want us to fight. They want us to bleed. They want us to kill each other. They want the left and the right to go after the other. And who are these forces, of course? Who do you think the forces are? Who do you think the forces are? It's old rich men in control. It's BlackRock. It's corporations. It's bankers. I mean, who profits when you have riots? Who profits when you burn stores down? Who profits when you turn our backs on each other? Corporations profit. Private equity profits. BlackRock profits. I mean, these are the people who maybe not are cheering Charlie Kirk's death, but cheered when the CEO of United Healthcare was killed. These are the people that cheered when that guy went, I think he was targeting the NFL, wanted to kill some people in the NFL, but landed up killing some people at BlackRock. They cheered. They thought it was amazing. I mean, what is interesting about the landscape of young people right now is it's nutty. It's absolutely nutty. It is an interesting time, and it's hard for me to get a sense. Maybe some of you who are part of Gen Z have a sense of the numbers here, but there's a big chunk of the youth today that is pro-socialism. I assume a portion of that chunk of youth that are pro-socialism are, free Palestine. A portion of them, are just anti-corporation, kill the CEO, that's fine. And then there's a portion of Gen Zs that are groypers, far-right nihilists of various types, all kinds of far-right weird, and then there's another portion that are not nihilists maybe explicitly, but are more Christian conservatives, like fans of J.D. Vance, who today did Charlie Kirk's radio show. J.D. Vance did it. I mean, I just wonder how many sane Gen Zs there are politically, from a political perspective. I don't know, but I'm curious. It does seem super scary and a weird place to be. So maybe some of you Gen Zers can educate me about what's going on in the world. Of course, the Trump administration, people in the Trump administration, are going to take full advantage of this. There is real passion among certain people on the right to do what they call dismantle the left, dismantle its institutions. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if universities next got a list from the government on which professors to fire, because they belong to the far left. It'll be interesting to see what the government does to, I don't know, anybody who gets money from George Soros, any nonprofits who are associated with the far left, any political parties or political organizations that might be deemed far left, how they're perceived. But there is really a energy, an excitement almost, a don't let, what was it that Rahm Emanuel said, don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? Don't let a crisis go to waste. Well, it seems like there are people within the Trump administration who are like, yeah, let's not let Charlie Kirk's assassination go to waste. Let's use this to accumulate more power and to get rid of our enemies. Stephen Miller on Fox News today. The last message that Charlie Kirk gave me before he joined his creator in heaven was he said that we have to dismantle and take on the radical left organizations in this country that are fomenting violence. That was the last message he sent me. We're going to do that. Now, what he considers fomenting violence is not clear, right? Their whole left-wing agenda is fomenting violence. Was celebrating the killing of Charlie Kirk fomenting violence? It should be protected on free speech, but is it fomenting violence? And what does this dismantling these organizations look like? And what are the grounds? And yeah, how does this fit into the rule of law? And on and on and on you can go. So it's going to be really, really interesting. Is it true, for example, that MSNBC is a radical left organization fomenting violence? Could it be perceived that way? Are they going to go after it? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Trump administration responds to this. Of course, part of that will depend on what kind of surfaces, that is, to what extent were other organizations, any kind of organizations, involved in what Tyler Robinson, in the killing, in the murder of Charlie Kirk. So we're going to see how all this plays out. It's going to be really interesting. Colt Savage says, as a Gen Z person, I can tell you my generation is wicked. Almost none of them are sane. Envy is an article of faith. I'm exceedingly pessimistic. That's horrible to hear. Really is horrible to hear. But it's and I wonder whether that is it. How prevalent is it? That is, how big is it? How are you hanging out in the wrong circles? Is it everywhere? Is it dominant? Here's Matt, who's also a Gen Zer. Nothing gets me more hate from my peers than advocating for objectivist principles. It's sad. So many are unable to think, only feel. But I think that was true with every generation. Nobody liked objectivism, right? Whenever we advocate for objectivism among our peers, people hated on us. Ridiculed at us, came after us. So I wonder if that is unique to Generation Z or if it's worse under Generation Z. I don't know. I'm wondering aloud. I wonder if anybody has any real perspective and data on this. It would be interesting. But it does look bad. It looks really bad. Both left and right, the nihilism, the growth in nihilism on both sides. And I think a lot of this is enabled, not caused, but enabled by the internet and their ability to communicate, to form groups, radicalize each other, and to do it from the safety of anonymity. The fact that the web can be completely anonymous, which it should be, I'm not against anonymity on the web, makes it possible for people to say things that they would never say in person, to do things they would never, to facilitate things they would never facilitate in person, to just generally engage in language and organization and advocacy that I don't think they would in person, because they'd be ashamed and they'd be afraid. And they'd be afraid of finding out, and they'd be worried about the counter arguments. The nice thing about hiding on some online chat is nobody's going to contradict you. Nobody's going to contradict you. Remember, these also kids who grew up during COVID in isolation. All they had was the basements and their chat groups. That was it. That was their entire social contact. So, all right. I will keep you updated as the news comes in about this horrific murder and about the motivation of the killer. To the extent that we learn new things, I think we'll learn more tomorrow when he's arraigned, and supposedly the government will lay out more of its case, or at least what they know to date. But yes, we'll know more tomorrow. So tomorrow's show, we'll talk about this some more. All right. On the front of, I know many of you are worried about the fate of TikTok. TikTok, the short video format platform that is hugely popular in the United States, enormously popular. Although its popularity has declined over the last year, there's another Chinese, I guess, similar company that is actually taking market share away from TikTok. Anyway, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, and which has supposedly a stake in it by the Chinese government. And therefore, there was real concern that the data from TikTok was basically being handed over to the Chinese government and used to spy on all of us, those of you at least who use TikTok. And people are really upset about this, and as a consequence, Congress passed a law that TikTok had to be either sold or shut down in the United States. And President Biden signed the law, and it was a done deal. And then Trump came in, and he basically said, no, I want to negotiate. And he basically ignored the law. There was nothing in the law that allowed the president to indefinitely extend the time TikTok could still be around. But Trump, for a variety of reasons, decided to keep it going, and negotiate. And it never was clear what he wants exactly. At some point, he suggested maybe the U.S. government would take it over, or maybe a U.S. company, and then the U.S. government would take a stake. And then I'm thinking, God, all we need is a U.S. government-owned social media platform. Talk about moving slowly towards authoritarianism. That would accelerate the place. So instead of actually following the law, Donald Trump basically ignored the law. Oh, by the way, the whole case went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled absolutely TikTok, the law stands. There's nothing, they claimed the law was unconstitutional. Again, I think they're wrong. Claimed the law was unconstitutional, and therefore it should be. So clearly, Trump just ignored the law, and nobody's doing anything about it. And nobody can do anything about it, I guess. He's just saying, I don't care. I'm keeping it open. I'm not enforcing that law. Which is, in and of itself, stunning and should be a scandal. I mean, like, he should be impeached just for that. All right, and then it turned out TikTok was part of the negotiations between China and the United States over tariffs, and over fentanyl, and over TikTok, and over rare earth minerals, and over, I guess, microprocessors. China, for example, just last week ruled that NVIDIA was a monopoly and was gonna penalize them in a variety of ways in China as a consequence of violating Chinese antitrust laws. So anyway, there've been negotiations going on between the United States and China about all these different issues. And it turns out that they have come to an agreement around TikTok. Nobody is saying what that agreement is, but supposedly China somehow, these negotiations, by the way, going on in Madrid, somehow these negotiations are going to lead, or this deal is going to lead to a deal by which the Chinese owner, ByteDance, is going to divest TikTok, and the a US company or US entity or the US government is going to buy it. Supposedly the agreement is between two private companies, and it's going to shift the social app into US controlled ownership. Now, I think one rumor has the US company that's involved here is Oracle. Oracle in the past was involved with a deal with TikTok to secure their servers in the United States. So the idea is that Oracle might take over TikTok. I think Microsoft has also tried to take over TikTok. I have a feeling though, and I don't know that I have a feeling that the US government's going to have a stake in this. I have a feeling that Trump is going to want some stock in TikTok, which should be illegal. Like, if we could rewrite the Constitution, I would definitely have a provision that says the government cannot own a private company. I mean, Biden did it, not Biden, Obama did it after the financial crisis with the auto industry, and Trump has now done it on several occasions, and he's, I think, about to do it again. I think this is a horrific move to have government involved in private business. This is, basically going to lead to such market distortions and much more corruption than we've ever had in this country. I am hoping that whatever deal they have is truly between private companies, and the U.S. government is going to stay out of it. But I suspect that the government is going to own a piece here. Yeah, Ian mentions that Donald Trump's already an owner of a social media network, his own social media network that he never divested, that he's never actually put his stock and his financial interests in a trust. He's never put them aside. He's the only president, I think, ever who has basically maintained all his economic interests while he runs the government and runs the economy and does all these things. No conflict of interest there at all. Not at all. Particularly as his businesses are accumulating things like crypto and going into all kinds of technologies that the government is very involved in approving or not approving. There's no problem of cronyism at all. All right, since we're talking about China, it is going to be interesting to see what the negotiations come out with out of Madrid are going to actually, beyond TikTok, which is a minor issue, what they're actually going to resolve. But China, you have to realize China, and I've said this over and over again over the last few years, and it's getting worse. China is not in a good place economically. China is struggling. China's economy is slumped again in August. It is not close to achieving its targets for the year. Factory output and retail sales had their weakest growth since last year in August. This is after, again, the central government has been pushing all kinds of economic policies to increase growth. This has nothing to do with tariffs. They basically managed to, everything they were selling to the US, they managed to sell elsewhere. It has everything to do with a phenomena that I've been describing to you, for years now that's happening in China. It has everything to do with the fact that China has centralized its control over the economy, the fact that China is much more engaged in managing the economy, the fact that the real estate market in China has collapsed completely before Trump even got into office. The real estate companies filed for bankruptcy. But yeah, I mean, they are in trouble. They're in trouble. And they're in trouble because the government is fueling whatever growth there exists in industry, and they're making the kind of mistakes that central planners always make. They're heavily subsidizing industries that don't need the subsidization, causing prices to come down, causing companies to overproduction, produce too much, drive prices down, start losing money. There are real challenges. Unemployment among young people in China has been well into the double digits, actually over 20% for years now. This is not Trump, has nothing to do with Trump. It's everything to do with the fact that China is mismanaging its economy because it's trying to manage it. Any management of the economy is a mismanagement. So we have a China that is struggling. It's going to continue to struggle. I'm still curious to see whether Xi can hang on to his political power. October will be the month in which we will discover the fate of Xi. Given that I think to everybody in China, it is obvious that China is economically really, really struggling and has since COVID, since certainly the dramatic lockdowns in China, but I would say even before COVID, since really the disappearance of Jack Ma, probably 2019, since the real clamping down on tech, the clamping down and the increased involvement of government in the economy. So it's going to be interesting to see how Xi deals with it and whether he can survive. All right. Also in China, and related to this, is we've talked a lot about BYD and China's dominance of electric cars, and China indeed dominates electric cars. BYD is their most successful company, and it's done very well exporting its cars and also building facilities in other countries and selling about 1 million cars outside of China, 1 million electric cars outside of China. Anyway, BYD stock has just been crushed over the last few weeks, and it's been crushed because it's facing these competitors who are producing better cars than they are, and they're producing them in the domestic market. But of course, China's a massive market, right? And BYD has seen $45 billion stock sell-off. That $45 billion are being wiped off of its value. Profits have come down dramatically, and they've come down dramatically because of the price wars that they're engaged in. They sell domestically. They're selling cars cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because it's the only way they can compete with their competitors. And the reason for that is that they have so many competitors, and the reason for that is central planning from Beijing, which dictated electric cars as one of the industries they wanted to dominate, and therefore poured money into the electric car business. All right. Just a quick check with you guys. Video okay? Everything okay? Audio, video okay? So BYD is plunging. There are other companies that most of us have never heard of. Geely, Geely, Automobile Holding, Zhenjiang Leap Motor Technology, significantly gaining ground. I mean, the dominance of Chinese auto company in the electric car is they're dominant. It's just not just BYD, it's a bunch of different companies, and the competition within China is brutal. And that competition is going to be a drag on BYD. And that competition, again, lowers profits, lowers investment. The investment now has to come from the government. If the government invests, it's not going to invest wisely. This is the kind of stuff that is killing the Chinese economy. All right, finally from China, this is a fascinating story. Fascinating story. So, I guess on September 11th, there was a massive leak online of 500 gigabytes of internal documents from China's Great Wall Company. This is the company, I guess, state-owned company, that manages China's internet surveillance, internet restrictions, internet controls. The leak has exposed tens of thousands of pages of documents, along with source code and work logs from the censorship system's core developers. So China censors the web. It censors its own people. It censors the access its own people have outside. It even has a mechanism to detect and block VPNs. So, supposedly this basically exposes all the stuff that they do, how they do it, the algorithms to detect and block VPNs, the algorithms that determine how they monitor internet traffic inside China. It also turns out that this technology is being exported to a number of countries, including Burma, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Kazakhstan, and other countries that are part of the China Belt and Road Initiative. Right? So they have a ready-to-use system that you can buy to basically impose censorship on your people. This is the largest leak in Great Firewall's history, and it potentially exposes vulnerability in surveillance systems used by the Chinese and, of course, these other regimes. So this is huge. This is good. It's going to be interesting to see what the fallout from this is. So there is a document online where you can find all the technical information, and that has a lot of technical information. You can contact the people who have the source code and are trying to analyze it and working with it. So you can find it in gfw.report. Look for gfw.report/blog/geedge, GEEDGE _N_Mesa_leak. You can find the information there if you're interested. All right, I said I'd do a bit of a dive on Nepal before I got back to you on that. So let me update you on Nepal in terms of what is going on there and what the context for what is going on there is. So Nepal, up until 2008, was basically ruled by a monarchy, a real monarchy, not just a constitutional monarchy, not a symbolic monarchy, but a real monarchy. Starting in the mid-1990s, the Communist Party of Nepal, it was a Maoist organization, waged an insurgency, destabilizing the country, and ultimately that, plus demonstrations by non-Marxist elements, eventually led the monarchy's abolishment and the declaration of a republic. In 2006, there was a big people's movement, mass protests, and ultimately pressured the king to cede absolute rule and establish a parliament, and again, a republican system. Now, after 2008, they've had a number of elections, but the reality is that the system is being characterized by political instability, shifting coalitions, fragmentation, protests, student protests, political parties protests, labor union protests, teachers, populist movements. I didn't even know this, but there's ethnic strife in Nepal. There are different ethnicities that are fighting each other. So this has been happening for a long time, and so Nepal has been rife with strife for a long time. The current demonstrations, the current protests basically came about when, and they're titled the Gen Z protests. They came about. They started on after September 4th, when the Nepali government suspended access to 26 social media platforms. That included Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, Snapchat, and many others. And they claimed that the reason was that these platforms did not comply with new digital regulations. But the reality is, and the way it was interpreted by the public, that this was basically a way to silence dissent. That the government was trying to silence its critics. It was a way to curtail free speech. And in particular, in the months leading up to this, there'd been a lot of chatter online on what are called Nepo babies. Nepo babies. These are the children of the family members of the Nepalese political elites, and who supposedly had enjoyed privilege and nepotism and unfair economic advantages and all of that. And there was a huge campaign online to, show this. And the government basically shut down the online world in order to protect their own children, the children of the elites, of the establishment. And as a consequence, using Discord and Instagram and other platforms, young people started organizing demonstrations, organizing tactics, where to demonstrate, how to demonstrate, when to demonstrate. The demonstrations were particularly in Kathmandu, which is the capital, and particularly near the federal parliament, but they spread to other cities. And while the initial gatherings were fairly peaceful, it escalated pretty quickly. Demonstrators tried to breach or approach government buildings. Security forces responded with tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets, and indeed in some cases, real bullets. The protests became increasingly violent. On September 8th, clashes erupted, and by then at least 19 people had died. Protests set fire to multiple key government buildings, including the federal parliament, the residence of political figures and party headquarters. The confrontation culminated in the storming of the Nepalese parliament building on the 9th of September. In response, the government lifted the social media ban, they folded, and the prime minister resigned. An interim government is being formed. That interim government is being led by a former Chief Justice, Sushila Karaki, a woman. She'll be the first Nepalese female prime minister. And what's interesting about her is she was one of the people nominated by the young people, the leaders of the youth movement. She has vowed, I don't think I got it. Anyway, she has vowed, that was a mosquito. She had vowed to not stay in the job for more than 6 months. And basically manage the government until there were elections and there was a new government put in place. And there's a lot now of rethinking about kind of Nepalese government corruption and everything else. So, keep an eye on it. It's interesting. I mean, Nepal's an interesting country. It's like in the middle of nowhere, right? It's on the top of in the Himalayas. But it's got a massive population, 30 million people. It's a small country, relatively speaking. It's a small country the size of Illinois or Arkansas, but 30 million people. It's a fairly young population, but aging fast. The vast majority of the people in the country are between the ages of 15 to 64. But there are a lot of 0 to 14 is 28%. But 30 million people, so it's not an insignificant country. It's in, again, like right up there in the Himalayas. We will see what actually happens. But this is, I think, it embolden other other groups of young people around the world to demand political change. They were successful. The Gen Zers were successful in this case. Let's hope, Gen Zers in other countries are as... I don't get the sense that these Gen Zers are crazy far leftists or far rightists. Let's hope that is the case for Nepal's sake. All right, what do we have? Let's see, two final things, and then I'll go to your questions. And as I said, today's show will end at 5:30. I've got a meeting at 5:30, and if I don't answer your question, I will answer it tomorrow. So please don't worry. The question will be answered. Over the weekend, the British right, the anti-immigration right, held a massive demonstration in London. Now, people on the right claimed that there were 3 million people in the streets of London. Now, that is an exaggerated claim. I don't think that's true. But there were a lot of people. The police say 110,000, which is more than anybody expected. I think, they're probably underestimating, looking at the pictures. I don't know. It's really impossible to say. I mean, it's not impossible to say. You could actually figure it out. But I'm going to say between, 150 to 300,000 is very reasonable. Maybe as many as 500,000 people. It was a big rally. It was a big demonstration. It was a big show of force. This was Brits fed up with the coddling of, Islamic migrants, no rule of law, the law treating white defendants different than treating Muslim defendants or colored defendants. Their frustration at the fact that there is this asylum system that just lets these people in, whether they can work or not, whether they have jobs or not, and the state feeds them and houses them in hotels, in small towns all over the UK. This is a reflection of the fact that I think England generally, or Britain, really, Great Britain, is dramatically moved to the right, is fed up with this government, is fed up with really the Islamic, the grooming gangs, the violence that comes from the Islamic section, but they're also fed up with the Free Palestine demonstrations in London. They're fed up with Islamists coming out regularly and stating that they want to bring Sharia law to the UK, that they don't care about the UK's law, that they want Islamic law in the UK. And they're fed up with that, and they should be. Indeed, polls in the UK show that the far-right bloc, that is the name of the political party just slipped my mind, is 34%. 34%. Labour would probably be at 19%, and the Tories, the Conservatives, at 15%. So we're looking at a complete destruction of the Conservative Party. If you put the Conservatives plus the what is the name of the party? Got somebody in the chat, bail me out here. Anyway, they would have 50% of the vote, and if there was an election, given the way, kind of the system, the electoral system in the UK, Reform. Thank you, Jennifer. The Reform Party would win a overwhelming victory in any election that were held, and with the Conservatives would dominate Parliament and could pass whatever they want. I think this is the reaction of, in a sense, the merger of Islamism with leftism. And more than any other kind of issue, particularly in Europe, that reflects that merger is the Free Palestine banner, the Hamas banner. The Islamism, which is a fundamentally internationalist movement, leftism, which is a fundamentally internationalist movement, leftism, which views Islam as a repressed religion, is the one, claiming that Islam is the one that are have been oppressed, the West are the oppressor, leftism that hates the West more than anything else. That combination of leftism and Islamism wrapped around a Palestinian flag, I think is now provoking a massive rise of interest in Christian nationalism in the UK and in the United States. Now, this right-wing wave started with Brexit. And indeed, if Brexit hadn't happened, there'd be a lot less Muslims in the UK today. The reality is that the immigrants who came into the UK to take the jobs that the UK needs, for example, in its healthcare system, were all coming from Eastern Europe, coming from Poland and Ukraine and places like that. Spain, Portugal, Italy. And what has happened is because of Brexit, what you get now is immigrants from British colonies who have the easiest time to come in post-Brexit. And that's Pakistan, India, Nigeria. Many of them being Muslims, particularly the Pakistanis and the Indians. But the right wave, so the right wave, the wave of right-wing activism that led to Brexit, to a large extent was motivated by anti-immigration, and some of that anti-immigration was targeted at people like at Poles and other Europeans. I think now those same people miss the Poles, miss the Europeans. What they didn't expect is to be replaced, having to replace the Poles with Muslims. But the reality is that the UK economy needs immigrants, particularly its healthcare system. The NHS does not run without huge numbers of immigrants. It's going to be interesting if they decide to deport all these people. What happens to the NHS? So right now we're seeing that right-wing wave of Brexit much bigger, much more radical. And by the way, radical here is all about culture. They're not pro-capitalism. Reform is a statist political party. It wants the state involved in economics. This, whole, demonstrations and events and so on was put on by Tony Robinson, who's been at the forefront of the anti-immigrant, particularly anti-Muslim immigrant in the UK for a long time. That is, I think, from his perspective, his only issue. But these people are committed to kind of a Christian nationalism. It's growing in Germany, it's growing in much of Northern Europe, and it's growing in France. Le Pen's party, I think, is going to expand. I think if you had elections again in Spain, you'd see the far-right party doing even better in Spain. The far-right party did really well in Portugal. This is growing. This is the next wave. I don't think the leftists can resist this. I don't think the leftists have any way to convince their people, and to convince enough people to stop this. The ideas of capitalism, socialism, all this, that's not what interests them. They're all statists, and it's all about culture. All about culture. It's all they care about. And maybe they'll do something about Islam, and then the question is, what happens then? What happens then? What do they do after they solve, if they solve the problem of Muslims in Europe? I'm not sure they have a solution, and I don't think they have a program after that. But one thing is certain, is that they are statists, and their success will only embolden them to be even bigger statists. All right, finally, a quick story about the place I live, my homeland these days, Puerto Rico. And that is, we've talked a little bit about this, the fact that, they put, the Trump administration has placed 10 F-35s in Puerto Rico. Well, they're doing a lot more than that. Basically, the U.S. Navy has basically reactivated its base in Puerto Rico. It used to be a very active base in Puerto Rico. It was shut down. It's been reactivated. The old Navy base was shut down in 2004. It's coming back to life. This is good for the economy of Puerto Rico. It used to be called Roosevelt Roads Naval Station, and it's in full capacity again. Over the past week, hundreds of U.S. service members and military equipment have been moving there. This is part of the big military buildup in the Caribbean. No official explanation being given, but as we talked about, Hegseth and the commander-in-chief of the military, the general was there in Puerto Rico, and basically, yeah, they're all in. I should maybe worry that Venezuela is going to bomb Puerto Rico. Who knows? Puerto Rico might be at the heart of our new war to secure Latin America for America. It seems like the U.S. is prepping for something. F-35s are there, those can reach Venezuela very, very quickly from Puerto Rico and undetected. Venezuela doesn't have the tech to identify this, and they can wreak havoc over there. They've also been deploying the Reaper drone to Puerto Rico. Again, the MQ-9 Reapers. Now, these can be detected. Actually, the Houthis shot a bunch of them down in Yemen. They have now been also detected there. And as we said, it really looks like preparation for some kind of military action in South America. Most likely place is Venezuela. Okay, let me throw quickly one more news story out there before we get to the questions. There's a lot of them. Okay, we'll do this quickly. And as I said, I won't be able to answer all these questions. No way, because I have a hard stop at 5:30. But I will take these questions and answer them tomorrow. I promise that. I'll just mention that the Hyundai thing, the immigration rate on the Hyundai plant is just an unmitigated disaster for the Trump administration. It was unjustified. It was a mistake. It was an error. Some junior official now at the State Department has acknowledged that, although the Korean foreign minister is asking Trump to apologize for it and to acknowledge that it was a mistake. These were agents that are trained for this kind of action. These are agents that are primarily working on things like counterterrorism and child trafficking cases, and now being pulled to go arrest illegal immigrants that are working for a living. The Koreans that were here had visas to work temporarily in the United States, to install equipment, to build a factory in which Americans will be employed. It's just a fiasco, which Trump, I don't think, will ever acknowledge. This is an ally. These are companies based in Korea that are investing in the United States, just like Trump claims he wants to. And they were harassed and humiliated. They were placed in detention for 3 days. They were treated badly in detention by all accounts. This is exactly what you'd expect from an amateurish statist, uncaring, rights-violating administration like the Trump administration. Just a disaster on all fronts with no upside, no benefit. Nothing good will come of this. A lot of bad. All right, since I'm in a hurry, I'm just going to go to Super Chats quickly and say that if you want to support the show for the rest of the show today, maybe do a sticker like Wes just did, $50. Thank you, Wes. That's great. We are 61 short of our second hour goal. So if you want to do $61 of stickers, that would be fantastic just to get us to a goal. But I'm going to jump in with the Super Chats. We'll see how many of them we get through. I'll definitely try to get the $50 and $20 questions done. Hopper Campbell, $50. Thank you. Does Objectivist community lack charisma? We don't have enough strong personalities. What made Ayn Rand's success was intense aura and commanding disposition. I'm not feeling that energy from the next wave of Objectivist intellectuals. No, I mean, I don't agree with you. I think what made Ayn Rand successful was the fact that she wrote The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. What made her successful is she was a best-selling author of books that almost everybody read, including many leftists, including many people within the intelligentsia who opposed them intellectually, read them. And they, as a consequence, were considered important books. And she, as a consequence, was considered an important intellectual, an important contributor to the debate. They disagreed vehemently. And of course, because the books were written, millions of people read them, there was a real impact on the culture. The books are what made the impact. Now, she did interviews and she made speeches, but none of it would happen. None of it would make any difference without the two novels. So I think that's what made Ayn Rand Ayn Rand. And then the second thing is I don't think it's her energy or anything like that. I think what it was she was a genius. Everybody knew she was a genius. She wasn't a particularly good speaker. She wasn't a charismatic speaker. She was a charismatic answerer of questions because of her genius, because she could narrow in on exactly what the question was asking and give a succinct, unequivocal answer. So I don't think, it would be great if we had more charisma in the objectivist community. But I don't think our intellectuals lack charisma. If I look at, Charlie Kirk, did Charlie Kirk have more charisma than many of our intellectuals? I don't think so. He had more ability to schmooze, more ability to organize, he had something that certainly objectivism lacks, the organizational ability and the ability to schmooze with people, to make connections. But part of that is just the fact that he was not advocating for something that was outside of the mainstream, completely outside of the mainstream. Our intellectuals, more or less charismatic than intellectuals that are active today? Less than Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris for a variety of reasons. But no, I don't see that. I think it's the content. I think it's the ideas. Our ideas, the time has not come yet. It just hasn't. Right now, the world is going through a period of dealing with superficial, emotionalistic, status strong man ideas of left and right. Those are the ideas that attract people right now. And it's not because of a lack of charisma, because people are still reading Ayn Rand. They're just not responding to her. Instead, they're responding to Nick Fuentes. Not because of his charisma, but because this is what they want. They want outrage. They want mindlessness. They want conspiracy theories. And they're responding to others who confirm the kind of the beliefs that they accumulated during their educational lives, right? So, I don't think our problem is lack of charisma. Our problem is the world is not ready for these ideas, and not enough of us, not enough intellectuals. We're trying to remedy that, but you need a lot of intellectuals of all kinds to change the world. Adam, the right's response doesn't seem good, but at what point is the far left rhetoric of words being violence actually partially responsible for an individual violence and justifiable to be counted versus chalking it up to crazy individuals? Well, you need to counter it. But the only legitimate way to counter it is through speech. Now, universities who are responsible and trustees to universities and donors to universities should insist on firing the professors who teach this crap. But that was true. That's always been true. But the point is this: the government has no business here. The government has no business here unless somebody is specifically calling for violence, unless somebody is specifically inciting violence. Everything else needs to be dealt with by intellectuals. No, they're mistaken. Free speech is not, or speech is not violence. Here's why. Here's why it's a cornerstone of our civilization. Here's why we depended on it for our survival. Here's why this is really, really important. And universities, you're not going to get my money unless you start firing the professors who teach this crap. That's what needs to be done. I agree. We shouldn't just chalk it up to crazy individuals. We need to fight the left's idea that speech is violence. Now, by the way, I'd feel a lot better if I thought the right believed in free speech. They don't. I would feel a lot better if I didn't think that if they kicked out, if they could, they would want to silence people as well. But having the government go in to dismantle the institutions of the left cannot be the right answer. It cannot be the government. It has to be an intellectual battle. The people who are assisting or inciting violence need to be arrested. But the government cannot start saying these professors are okay, these professors are no good. And if the problem is, but they're funding these universities, then okay, let them stop funding the universities. But I'd rather they stop funding the universities all at once and create real havoc than start dictating to universities which professors are good and which are not. That will end really, really, really badly for this country. That's the government getting involved in speech and what's being taught. And that's a violation of free speech. That's a violation of exactly what we're trying to fix. But I agree that the people teaching this, advocating for this, are partially responsible. Not responsible in a legal sense, but absolutely responsible in a moral sense. People advocating for this are evil. They're morally evil, and they should be, you should do to them what you do with morally evil people who are not legally culpable. You should isolate them. You should fight against them. You should kick them out of, places where they have influence. When I say you, private citizens should. Private enterprise should, not the government. For example, a lot of companies have fired people for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. That's good. I'm all for that. That kind of canceling, which is voluntary, private, I'm absolutely 100% for. All right, Michael. People are surprised the kid's father turned him. I think turning him in is basically an act to reduce your own pain because you will know you did justice. What hurts is to realize you devoted significant time of your life to creating a monster. I agree with you completely. I don't find it surprising that the father turned him in. I think this is what most fathers would do, particularly given how clearly the father opposed the action, opposed what he did. The father also knew he was legally liable, right? He was legally complicit and could be arrested for harboring a criminal. But most importantly, I think you're right. I think what he did was an act of justice. I think he knew that. I think that it makes it. I think the real pain he's going to go through is exactly what you're saying, is the fact that he has devoted so much time, energy, love to creating such a horrible human being. That's the pain that he's going to feel, not about turning him in. I don't think he'll ever regret that. All right, let's see. Thank you, Harper, Adam, and Michael for the $50 questions. Those are great, and they help get us to our goal really, really quickly. Mike says, our government can't stop giving away money. Now it's $1,000 to each baby born in the U.S. Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous and pathetic. This is Trump's thing about setting up saving accounts for every baby born in the U.S. and giving them $1,000. We have so much money in this country. We don't have to borrow it all. You know, we just create the money. The money grows on trees in the United States. So why not hand each baby $1,000? I can't think of any reason not to. You know, and remember, that's a redistribution of wealth, a massive redistribution of wealth from you to the babies, whether you want it or not, from your children to the babies, from your babies to their babies. Yeah, it comes right out of your tax money, and if it doesn't come out of your tax money, then it will come out of your tax money in the future, and in the meantime, it'll be inflated away by you paying higher prices. Another tax. Inflation is a tax as well. Not your average algorithm. As flawed as the Enlightenment is, intellectuals haven't had the ability to suppress it for long periods of time. We had 2 world wars, depression, but there's always been a bounce back towards prosperity that lasts longer. Yep, I mean it has, but there's no guarantee that it can continue. As we get further and further away from the Enlightenment, those ideas have a lighter and lighter hold on the world. And the more they're attacked, and they used to be attacked almost exclusively from the far left, from the Marxist and from the postmodern left, and to some extent by the far right, but it was very small. Now, Enlightenment ideas are attacked thoroughly by the dominant right, not the far right, the dominant right, the national conservatives, the Christian conservatives, the MAGA, the Republican Party, and by the left, the far left. So there's a sliver of people, right of center, left of center, who still believe in the Enlightenment. And it's not clear whether the Enlightenment ideas can survive this, and in what form, and in how. James, a ballistic expert was explaining what happened with Charlie's bulletproof vest. Because it was steel and not one of the newer vests that crumple when impacted, the steel plate ricocheted the rounds into his neck. Wow. That is brutal. Where is the part 2 of your question? James says, Super Chat won't let me post my part 2 for some reason, so it's in the chat. But let's see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it, James. Yeah, I can't get to it right now. Can you send me an email with it and I'll answer tomorrow? But, I mean, that's pretty horrific that is the case. I'm looking at the chat here. Where's James? Yeah, I don't see any question from you in the chat. Maybe you could type it again. Maybe you could type it again right now. All right, thanks, James. Yeah, I mean, I'll make sure if I buy a bulletproof vest, I'll buy the type that crumples. Because, yeah, I mean, my guess is that the target was the chest. That's where you would shoot. Andrew, can you explain secular mysticism in terms of its cause and or effects? Well, secular mysticism is just any secular ideas that basically rely on some form of revelation, some form of non-rational means of knowledge. Ultimately, almost all secular philosophy becomes that, right? So how does a Marxist know what the proletarian need? Want, desire, it has to come from something. And you could go on and on. So it's, environmentalism, the elevation and worship of nature above man, without what does nature want? How does nature communicate with you? Non-rational, completely non-rational. So it has all the trappings of a religion: the guilt, the penance, the original sin, You see that with intersectionality as well, and I did a whole show on how intersectionality was inspired by religion. You get that in the whole far left. The right, of course, is just straight mysticism, but you get that in communism as well, where the same thing. I mean, the capitalism is infusing with guilt, and the proletarian has original sin in even being born proletarian. So it works by basically assuming that knowledge is gained through some kind of non-rational means, and that it embodies certain behaviors and rituals that are associated with mysticism. We can get into it more in depth another time. All right, Richard has a $50 question. What is the most pro-U.S. Western Islamic country? Egypt, Jordan, Morocco? Where the Jordan and Egypt have large Palestinian populations, but I'm curious about the government people who are most promising in the region. Oh, in the Middle East? Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's Egypt. I don't think it's Jordan. Both those countries have very high concentrations of Muslim Brotherhood, which are very anti-West. Morocco, maybe. Maybe even Dubai or United Arab Emirates. They're small enough that you could have a high concentration. In terms of Muslim country more broadly, you would then have to consider Malaysia, Indonesia as potentials as well. But I think in the Middle East, it's difficult because the Muslim Brotherhood is very prevalent in Egypt, very prevalent in Jordan. Even though they have a peace relations with Israel, it's very fragile. The Egyptian Sisi, the president of Egypt today, called Israel the enemy. So I don't think any of those places. Sadly, maybe Morocco, but it's hard to tell. Morocco too has quite an Islamist presence. I don't know if there were free elections in Morocco, who would win and whether the Muslim Brotherhood would win. In Egypt, they did win when there were free elections, and they probably would win if there were free elections today. Liam, the reason Trump is attractive is because he has that up yours attitude, the giant middle finger attitude towards political correctness that's more attractive than the typical nothing middle of the road Republican. Yes, I mean, there's a sense in which that's true, but he also has a middle finger to everything that is America. He has a middle finger to capitalism. He has a middle finger to CEOs of American companies. He has a middle finger to free speech. He has a middle finger to the idea of, the freedom, for example, to burn the flag. He has a middle finger to the Constitution and to the rule of law. So, yes, he stands up to the left, and that's what people like him. But he has no respect for what made this country America. He has no respect for America, properly understood. But I guess neither do people. Neither do his voters. Most of his voters, anyway. Liam, the victims represent what the perpetrator cannot attain. They represent a reality that the perpetrator cannot accept. The perpetrator do not want to exist where the values that their victims represent can be achieved. You're talking about like the story with Charlie Kirk. The guy shot him because he does not want to live in a world where Charlie Kirk can be successful. I think that's right, but the question is why and what are the values that are driving him to that conclusion? But I think that's right. Richard, thank you, $50 again. How much stock should we put in surveys coming out of Iran, which show over 80% of Iranians in Iran strongly disapprove of Islamic Republic and favor regime change? If this is true, how can the regime stay in power? I think you can put quite a bit of stock. I don't know if 80% is the right number, but it's a majority. I think you saw that with the demonstrations. You saw that elsewhere. The problem is that none of those people sit in positions of power or with leverage. The leverage, the guns, in other words, all reside with the Revolutionary Guard and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the military. And unless you get a defection from the military, unless you get the defections from somebody like that, or the people have the guts, the courage to actually go into the street and tolerate being shot at, tolerate the murder of hundreds, maybe even thousands of people in the streets, unless Iran is willing to do that, unless they have the courage to do that, nothing's going to change. So what's going to have to change is the willingness of Iranians to go out into the street in mass, by the millions, like they did in the '79 revolution. But this time against a brutal enemy that is likely to be willing to shoot them. And I don't know. I'm not in touch enough with what's going on inside Iran. All right, final question for today. Many people who take life seriously are maligned as humorless. It's funny that some who knew Ayn Rand claim she lacked humor, which is not true. Yet others claim she laughed easily. The truth is that she knew when to be serious and when to be funny. Yes, and taking life seriously means to also know when to have fun and also know when to take it appropriately, when to laugh. That means a holistic view of life. It isn't seriously, oh, I can never smile, I can never laugh, I can never have fun, I have to be serious. Taking life seriously means embracing all aspects of life and applying your reason, applying your judgment to every one of those aspects and living up to them, being the best that you can be with them. All right, tomorrow we'll have the show, if nothing crazy happens, tomorrow we'll have the show at 3 p.m. East Coast time, and it will be a long show. Expect a long show tomorrow, because I will have to cover all the questions you asked today, which I haven't answered, and there were quite a few of them, plus all the questions you asked tomorrow, and I expect there to be quite a few tomorrow. So I apologize that I have to run today, and I kind of squeezed it in, but yes, tomorrow the show will be at maybe even at 2. There's a chance I'll do the show at 2 p.m. East Coast time, so earlier, and we'll go late. So start earlier and we'll go late, and we'll cover all your questions. Be ready with new questions for tomorrow, because we'll do a 3-hour show tomorrow, and we'll talk about everything you guys want to talk about. So I have to run. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great